Welcome, everyone, to Breaking Big Blue. I'm your host, Jordan Raanan, ESPN, ESPN.com. Breaking Big Blue times Giants Nation show. Here we are. Another firing to discuss, second time this year. Bobby's waiting in the background. We'll get to him in a little bit. We'll talk real quick about Jaxson, the potential of him playing this week, the firing of Shane Bowen, the hiring of Charlie Bullen, the Malik Nabers tweet, Dexter Lawrence, and then we'll get into the coaching search a little bit, because if you saw the story I wrote last week. Was it last week? Yeah, it was the end of last week, about the Giants and Joe Schoen and their coaching search, and I think I kind of laid out a little guidelines there. So we'll throw the early names in there for Bobby Skinner, just to see, what interests you on coach and what doesn't. But let me start here, okay? We'll get to Shane Bowen in a second. But the Giants blew another game. They're right. Jameis Winston played great for the most of the game. Missed a couple throws late, threw an interception late. But the interception, actually, the Giants forced a punt, if you remember. So they actually did a really good job on that possession. But the defense collapses again late. Shane Bowen gets fired. Okay. Now, the Giants play again on Monday night. Jameis Winston played great, but at the same time, as this season's about Jaxson gaining experience, letting him learn his lessons, right? So, from what I heard, the likelihood is Jaxson the right phrasing should be actually, he's trending towards playing on Monday night, that they're trending towards his return being on Monday night. You have to think about it. He practiced all 3 days last week. And he was on the field on Friday running around and doing things, even though he was ruled out. So with that being the case, that doesn't mean Jaxson had a setback. He has symptoms, all these things. He was still on the field practicing. So to me, that was very important. And I think that's why we're trending towards Monday night, Jaxson making his return against the New England Patriots, which is obviously a tough game now. The Patriots have won 9 straight. They're the hottest team in the NFL. The best team in the NFL, the AFC, I should say. I think they're tied with the Rams. But that's what the Giants got on Monday night. They'll have a new defensive coordinator because they fired Shane Bowen. It finally happened. Look, this move could have happened weeks ago. It could have happened with Brian Daboll. Ultimately, the Giants wanted to leave it up to Mike Kafka, right? It was on Kaf to decide his own staff. And this is really a trickle down from John Marin. You could say whatever you want. He meddles, blah, 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 this and that. He's involved. Look, he's there every day. He gives his opinions, but he does allow this. He allows the coaches to handle their own staff. They make decisions on their own staff. So when they decided to fire Brian Daboll, which, by the way, had to happen and had to happen before or with Shane Bowen. You couldn't just get rid of Shane Bowen before Brian Daboll. To me, that was not even a question. That would have been a total scapegoating because, A, Brian Daboll was responsible for hiring him. Okay? That's his hire. Brian Daboll hired Shane Bowen. He couldn't get along with Wink Martindale. They couldn't make that work. He brought in this defensive coordinator, right? Their offense struggled for years. The defense under Bowen struggled the last 2 years. You couldn't separate the two and be like, no, Shane Bowen, it's all your fault. No, you can't. You don't just get to dump assistant coaches left and right and leave bodies behind relentlessly. There's a lot of coaches, if you think about it. I think it's 7 coaches, assistant coaches were fired. This is now 8. 8 assistant coaches under Brian Daboll. I shouldn't say this is technically not under, but that he brought in were fired in the last, 2 calendar years? 8 coaches. That's not even including the head coach. That's 8 assistants. So there you go. And I guess fired isn't the right word because Wink didn't technically get fired. They pushed him out the door. But you get the point. So Shane Bowen goes. Defenses kept blowing leads. Couldn't make enough plays. Results matter in this league. Same with Daboll. In the end, results matter. That's what this comes down to. The results were terrible. And so when you blow a 5th game with a double-digit lead, right, and another double-digit lead in the 4th quarter, They're up 10 points with 4 minutes to go? No, sorry. 10 minutes to go. 11 minutes to go. They got the ball back down 3 with 3 minutes to go, the Lions. When that's the case, tying an NFL record, 5 losses with double-digit leads, all on the road, by the way. The defense isn't doing a good enough job. And everybody agreed to that. You could see it with Shane Bowen. He was a beaten man the last, few weeks. Totally understand. So, to me, that was the breaking point. And then to the Giants. And look, this is a Kafka decision, right? Like I said, they were going to let I'm getting text because I have a flat tire, by the way, and I'm trying to fix my car. So, getting nonstop text.
What happened? I'm an expert in flat tires. I've had very many.
Yeah, this was a non-negotiable. It was an unsalvageable. There was a nail on the side sticking out.
Oh yeah, sidewall. You got to get a new one.
Yeah, and it was hanging out a good foot. So when I was driving, you could actually, and it wasn't bending or coming out. You could actually feel it going. You're like going on top of the nail. So it was bad.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually I had to pump the tire just to get it to the shop. Because it wasn't going to be able to get there otherwise. So, sorry to derail that. So they had to fire Shane Bowen. And they left it up to Mike Kafka. If it was up to the front office, it was up to ownership, Bowen would have probably been gone even earlier, to be honest with you. From everything I heard, Brian Daboll kind of stood up for, was the biggest backer of Shane Bowen. And then Kafka said, I wanted to keep him as well. But it reached a point where even Kafka said, I can't keep him anymore. You blow another game. 2 games with Kafka as the coach, 2 fourth-quarter leads blown. Okay? So at that point, he says, I need a new defensive coordinator. I have to make this decision. Right? The front office, the ownership, that's not a hard one to sell them on. They're looking at it saying, look at the pieces on our defense. They think it's probably better than it even is. Look at the pieces on our defense. We're not getting the most out of it. Right? And that's been for weeks, for months. So easy move. Now, they could have waited till after the bye week. I thought that was a possibility. Why not just at least wait till the bye week? Then you give Charlie Bullen, who in this case was chosen to be the defensive coordinator, 2 weeks to then get ready. But they just figured, hey, we have an extra day this week. We can't really keep going forward. It's hard to even look the players in the eyes and say we're giving you the best chance to win if you keep going on like this. So they had to make that move. And my interpretation, talking to some players, ho-hum. They weren't distraught. They weren't happy. It wasn't like, thank God we got rid of Shane Bowen, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I think they knew, it wasn't going well. He wasn't giving them an advantage. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. And now Charlie Bullen takes place. Now, why Charlie Bullen? He was the choice here. Has a background connected to Vance Joseph, who's the defensive coordinator in Denver. Spent a bunch of his years in Arizona, previously a little bit in Miami, working under Joseph. So, I asked people, well, what does a Vance Joseph defense look like? Because you figure, all right, Charlie Bullen, that's his mentor. One of his mentors, at least. Primary mentor. If that's his primary mentor, he'll probably resemble in some way, shape, or form what that defense is going to look like. And yeah, you're saying, well, the Giants, there's 5 games left at this point. Is it 5? They're what? 2-10, they're 12. Yeah, 5 games. You say, well, does it even really matter? Well, it'll be interesting to see what he can get out of the defense. They're going to be playing worse offenses going forward. You got the Patriots this week who lost the whole left side of their offensive line. And then after that, you got the Commanders, who we don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to be back. You have the Vikings, they're a mess with J.J. McCarthy. Right? You have the Raiders. Forget about the Raiders. They just fired their offensive coordinator. And you have the Cowboys. Their offense is really good. So for these next 5 games are games where the defense theoretically should look better. So we'll see how Charlie Bullen can do here with a defense that we expect to look a little bit. You can't make wholesale changes, but a little bit more like Vance Joseph. And what I learned from asking around about some assistant coaches and executives about what Vance Joseph defense, aggressive. A lot of guys at the line of scrimmage. showing different things. Doesn't mean they're bringing different things, but at least we'll create the impression that things are coming from different ways. Things to disguise and disrupt and trick the opposing offensive lines. And then a lot of man coverage behind it, which could be trouble for the Giants, especially if Paulson Adebo's not back. And I don't really know. I don't really have a real firm gauge on or strong take on him being back this week or not. The likelihood is probably not, especially with the bye. You at least sit him one more week, and then maybe if he comes back, it's for the Final Four there. So playing man on the back end could be risky. You could get some big plays, but you could also get some more big plays up front from the Giants. And I looked in the Broncos defense under Vance Joseph, his approach, bringing a lot of guys at the line, whether they're coming or not, dropping them back, just creating the impression that pressure might come from a lot of different places. 9 unblocked sacks this season. That's second in the NFL. The Giants so far this season, 2 unblocked sacks. The only one with less going into last night was the 49ers. I don't know if they got any, but they had 0, which we know that's Robert Sala's defense, but still 0. That's kind of surprising. But 2 unblocked sacks for the Giants this year. So maybe he could create something there. We'll see how that ultimately plays out, but it'll be interesting to see at least if it makes a big difference. Hopefully, I think the plan is that we're going to hear from and speak to and see Joe Schoen after the Patriots game, right? He talks every year after the bye. So we'll get some maybe explanations on what's going on and what they think about where the organization is at the moment. And also I wanted to talk about real quick. We'll get to Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter and Malik Nabers and all that stuff in a little bit. But the coaching search. I put out an article the other day. People around the league seem to think that Joe Schoen, barring something crazy down the stretch here, like, they lose out or the poop keeps hitting the fan and there keeps being more fires that need to be put out and the team's a total mess and they're a laughing stock. Assuming they're able to avoid that the final 5 weeks of the season, 6 weeks, 5 games, the feeling around the league, people who are involved in these coaching searches feel that the likelihood is Joe Schoen's going to be back, right? And the majority of the reasoning is, first of all, they're talking to people inside the Giants organization, but also he's literally running the coaching search. So does it make sense to anybody that you're going to have somebody run the coaching search, get us 75% of the way there by like the beginning of the new year, right? After the season finale, you're not hiring. The hiring of the coach is going to happen probably a couple weeks later. You're going to have a guy take you 75% of the way and then cut ties there. Talk about a bad process of coaching hire. That would be it. And look, I'm not the biggest Joe Schoen backer, right? Based on the results of the team that they've had. Like they just haven't won as a team. Like he's done some good things, he's done some bad things. But sorry, I have a hair on my screen here. But the thought around the league and involving with the coaching process is barring a coach who basically doesn't want to work with Joe Schoen. And that's kind of hard to get to that point, considering he's the one making the list. You figure that wouldn't be the way he's, comprising the list if he's the one in charge of making the list, which seems like he is. He gets input from others in the organization. That he's likely to remain unless there's a coach that's hired that says, I want to bring in my own guy. It's not. I don't want it to be Joe Schoen. So that's the start. Then what are they looking for? I think the preference is to have somebody with experience, head coaching experience. The preference doesn't mean it has to be a leader of the room. It doesn't necessarily matter if they're this hot coordinator, right? Offense, defense. I think the preference would probably be offense. Although I don't even know that, to be honest with you, with the way the Giants have been defensively the last couple of years. I think they'd be all right with it. I don't think it matters, to be honest with you. What matters to them is having a guy that they feel can build, who can build up a program, who can talk to the entire room, who can oversee all 3 phases of the game. So I think that is more important than, is this guy an offensive genius? Is he an X's and O's genius? That I don't think is the priority here in regards to the Giants coaching search. So previous head coaching experience probably is a bonus. Probably helps you out in this case. Someone who has a track record of being a really good head coach probably helps him out in this case. But I don't think they're going to just, from talking to people, I don't think they're just going to be super closed and say, no, we won't even consider college coaches. No, we won't consider guys with no experience and coordinators. I think they're going to look at all those levels, bring in a bunch of different kind of candidates before making the decision. Now, I don't think they're going to have a pool of like 50 like the Jets had a couple of years ago in regards to their GM search. Like, I don't think that's what the Giants head coaching search is going to be like. But I do think it'll have a bunch of wide-ranging options. And look, guys like Steve Spagnuolo, Lou Anarumo, Antonio Pierce. Like, I do believe these guys, I feel confident, are going to get interviews. They have track records, right, as coaches. Two of those three guys, Pierce and Spags, as former head coaches, connections to the organization. Well, they'll at least get a courtesy interview. I think all three of them, probably a little more than courtesy. I think they all have a chance. But I think those three guys, I feel confident, are going to get interviews. Now, there's other guys I'm sure are going to get interviews. Bunch of different coordinators. I like Jesse Minter with the Chargers. I think he has a good chance to get an interview. Chris Shula with the Rams, right? So I think all of these guys, Mike Kafka's obviously probably going to, I'd assume, I don't know how the season ends, but he gets an interview also. And then the list expands from there. I think behind the scenes, they'll probably talk and, feel out some potential college head coach's interest. I brought up the name Matt Campbell. I know everyone's like, Matt Campbell, who hasn't had great success at Iowa State, like in regards to, national championship, but he's built a program there at a place that's really hard to win. NFL people like him. And I've heard from multiple people that over the past couple of years, the Giants have done work on Matt Campbell. So that's why I put him on the list, and it at least intrigues me. Now, I don't know how serious that is, but it's an interesting one to me. Look, NFL people really like him, so we'll see. I don't really know if that's the way they're going to go or not, but it's definitely someone I'm going to at least keep my eyes on as the process goes along here. Matt Campbell probably will have some big college offers. Also, there's some big jobs out there. Florida, LSU. What happens with Lane Kiffin? That could make Ole Miss come open. Maybe Joe Judge takes that job, by the way. But yeah, so some Penn State, some really big college jobs out there as well. And that'll also, I think, factor into the equation with some of these big college coaches maybe looking, the Giants might be poking around behind the scenes. So with that said, on to the next one, Bobby. Hey.
Hello. Up? As my blinds look like
I was about to say, I was about to make a comment about that.
Yeah.
I think you need,
this is a 9 a.m.
lighting in there.
Yeah, 9 a.m. So I have my windows to the side. So I close the blinds, but the light shines through. So want to kind of close out the Shane Bowen stuff. I really don't think there's anything deeper to be figured out about why Shane Bowen got fired. I think it's fairly simple. It's a bad defense, and they kept blowing fourth quarter leads, right? Like, the only thing I would have said was it was weird I understand why they kept Shane Bowen when they fired Brian Daboll, or why Mike Kafka, but it's just very weird to be like, hey, the fourth quarter losses, and then keep the defensive coordinator.
The thing is, let me jump in right here real quick. The reason is, from what I've kind of been hearing, it's a lot for Mike Kafka to be taking the big seat, right? And all the things that come with it. To then do the defense at the same time and have a new defensive coordinator and really have to, rejigger the defense and get everything realigned and, change up some schemes and some of the things you're doing Now you're putting even more on the plate of a guy who's never been a head coach before and has just stepped into the seat. So I think that's why he waited. Remember, he kept open the possibility that there'd be more changes to the staff, but he didn't want to do it right away.
Right. What gave Charlie Bullen the edge over two former defensive coordinators in Andre Patterson and Marquand Manuel?
Well, let's start with Andre Patterson. I think you got to read the writing on the wall here of what they really think internally about Andre Patterson, okay? First of all, he's a defensive line coach for a team that's been just god-awful against the run for 3 straight years now, okay? So let's start there. To promote the guy whose line has been kind of, is at least significantly to blame for that, to then promote him, that's saying something.
I don't think he's significantly to blame for that, to be honest.
I said his line has to at least the line has to at least be, a significant part of the blame for the run defense woes. I mean, I get it. Probably not number one on my list, but it's definitely on the list. The interior depth behind Dexter is bad, right? And they just have not been able to figure that out. He likes to get his guys upfield, and I don't think it helps against the run. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But his unit is not exactly lighting it up, right? So to then promote him would be something. On top of the fact that, remember, the Giants didn't even give him an interview, not even a token interview for the defensive coordinator job when it was open 2 years ago. And I think there's reason for that. And part of those same reasons is why he wasn't given the job. Marquand Manuel, same thing. His position group has actually been struggling, right? We can make the argument his position group is the worst position group on the team this year. So to then promote that guy, I think, would have been a little questionable and hard to justify to the guys in the room. So Charlie Bullen, who is well-liked, comes from a Vance Joseph background, which I think is big here. Like a little more significantly more aggressive. I think the Broncos are third in the league in blitz percentage. Whatever it is, it's high.
It's a Wink Martindale style of defense. So like you said, I almost popped in when you said a lot more man coverage on the back end. I was like, that's when the Giants have been their worst, was with man coverage.
Yeah, I didn't say a lot more man coverage. I just said it has a lot of man coverage on the back end. Because the Giants, when I looked it up, they're high on the man coverage percentage this year, really high.
Yeah, very high. Now they've went away from that, right? In this whole Shane Bowen thing, is I actually think Shane Bowen's best schematic run is probably over the last 6 weeks, where he has changed it up a ton.
Yeah, they played a lot of zone.
But Paulson Adebo being out has been a major issue for them. And then obviously there's other issues. And even with that, I still didn't think it was good schematic from Shane Bowen.
Lots of bodies at the line of scrimmage, aggressive with lots of man coverage, like that. Those are the kind of things. Good if you've got a good pass rush, which the Giants do. So, like, if he brings that style, which I would expect to some degree, I don't think we're going to see a full 180 and you see a whole switch. Like, that's tough in 8 days. But I do think we'll see more of an influence of that. So, right. And I think that's why he's very well liked. He's got a good personality. He's got a sternness to him, Charlie Bullen, I'm talking about here. I think that's why Kafka decided that this was the guy, that this was the right guy. And his position group has played at least, they've done the best group. I mean, they have the most talented group, but they've also, for the most part, I know Abdul Carter's kind of been going in the wrong direction here, has played fairly well this year. So I think that's went into the decision as well.
How much is the connection to Joe Schoen in Miami a part of it? The Giants referenced it in their article. Josina Anderson said that him and Joe are friends. Like, is that really anything, or is that kind of more coincidence sake?
I think it's more Vance Joseph than Joe Schoen, to be honest with you. Joe Schoen has, worked with Vance Joseph as well. They like that defense. I think it's more along that line than it is the specific relationship with Joe Schoen. Now, Joe Schoen is certainly part of Mike Kafka said this yesterday. They basically run everything by him. He's talking throughout the week about trick plays and talking those throughout the week with the general manager, which, by the way, I asked a couple coaches if like that was something that they had ever heard of at the places they were at, and they're like, no chance. like the general manager talking about trick plays with the head coach is not something that these guys had ever heard of. So
yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Like, what do you make of that? Because that's not normal that the GM is like that kind of ingrained in like getting almost like a game script of stuff that's happening. Like,
I'll be honest.
I
asked some coaches who are with very established head coaches, so it's hard to. I really haven't asked around the whole league, but I do think my general impression from seeing general managers and multiple general managers now here, Joe Schoen is more involved and hands-on with the day-to-day and the practice and what's going on in the games than any other general manager that I've been around. I'm talking about basically just Jerry Reese and Dave Gettleman, right? They kind of just handled the personnel side. They talked out the big decisions, but they weren't involved in like data. I don't think I never was under no impression that they would be like talking about Jerry Reese would be talking about trick plays that Tom Coughlin's about to use on Sunday. Remember Joe Shea was on the headset at one point, right? All these other things that if you think back on. So he's certainly more involved, I think, than most coaches. Now, I don't think it's probably not completely rare, but also, I do still think he's more hands-on than the average general manager.
Do you think he's in on the headset? Because you remember that being a big thing with I guess that'd be speculation. I'm not going to ask you that.
Yeah, I don't know that, but no, he doesn't have a headset on during the game anymore like that. So no, I don't think you think he's sending stuff down to them during the game.
No. What I'm saying is like, is he listening? Because you remember with the Dable Wink thing, there was issues, so he had an earpiece that he was listening in on, and we didn't know until after the season when it was reported that Shane was listening in to see how much of a lunatic Dable actually was on the sideline. Let's see. I want to see if there's anything, that on this coaching stuff that I wanted to finish. So here's what I'll finish off with this. Can you kind of talk about like why was Shane Bowen brought back in the first place when ownership laid it out that he could be fired? And basically, I listened. Papa said flat out. I listened to their thing yesterday. Where flat out ownership and the team was very willing to fire Shane Bowen and allow Brian Dable. Like they were fully behind that, and Brian Dable decided to stick behind him.
Well, who is Brian Dable going to be able to get to be his defensive coordinator at that point?
So I hate when this is getting used.
Tell me who would want to take that job knowing your job.
Somebody who not everyone's thinking of, right? That's the Giants' issue is like they just go through the list of who are the best defensive coordinator candidates instead of like, hey, there's good defensive coordinator candidates that are out there. They're just not obvious. Let's go and find it. Let's uncover stones.
I think you're missing the point. You're missing the point of anybody who is a good young coach and has a future. You don't want to take a job where you're likely screwed. Like the likelihood was had this coaching staff was going to be blown out after this season. Anybody with eyes saw that, right?
I think you underestimate how often people would take, and defensive coordinator is different than offensive coordinator, but underestimate people take jobs like Denard Wilson, right? With the Titans, their defenses haven't been good under him. I think he's probably going to get another DC job somewhere else, even though it hasn't been good with the Tennessee Titans. Defensive coordinators get second chances. Hell, look at even Shane Bowen, right? He got another chance with the Giants. So, I just think there could have been some young guy who was not really on the radar. Someone could have been someone from college or whatever who would have been willing to take that risk to get a shot at it. And these guys believe in themselves that they can coach and stuff too.
Tough job to fill. Looks terrible on Dable that he had to switch coordinators again. Right?
I agreed with that. So I agree with those points.
The perception, the optics of it, of just Brian Dable is looking for a job right now. If you just keep sacrificing coaches, by the way, that he hired, that was part of the problem too. He didn't want to get rid of him and look bad on him. That was his hire. right? If you keep sacrificing coaches and pointing the finger and blaming everybody else, it's going to be a lot harder for him in his future if he ever wants to go get another. Why am I going to get this guy? He's just going to point fingers at everybody else.
Well,
they fired 8 coaches.
Those stories are already out, number one. And this is, I think, is a Giants issue, is they look at the reasons of like, oh, that's not good. But they never, like, they should have looked at Shane Bowen and be like, that's a bad defensive coordinator. Simple as that. And getting him good players is not going to turn him into a defensive coordinator, right? His vision is totally different than the defensive coordinator we originally brought in. This doesn't work. He doesn't do anything that challenges us, right? And Brian Daboll went up against him in training camp. And guess who Brian Daboll's offenses have looked the best against the last couple of years? Shane Bowen's. Russell Wilson never looked better than just being the face basic man coverage in training camp, all of training camp, and then went against the Jets, and it was like, this is a totally different story. And this is the Jets who have 0 interceptions this season, which is the wildest stat I've ever seen in my entire life. But
wait, they didn't get one? Would they get a fumble? I saw them
they have 1 fumble recovery. They have 0. Could you imagine
fumble,
0 interceptions? That's unbelievable.
So I think the ball would hit off somebody's helmet and just pop into the air and land in your arms.
Something
like what happened with Javon Holland the other day.
Yeah, exactly. Like something.
They hit off the hands of the receiver, and it was like, oh, here you go.
Yeah. So, but I just kind of wanted to close the book on Shane Bowen. The next thing I want to talk about is, I'm going to even play some stuff. What the hell is going on with Dexter Lawrence? I'm going to play your clip that you posted Sunday night.
Did you want to be on the field in that first play overtime? Was that a situation where you already knew you couldn't be because they were trying to preserve?
Yeah, they were just allowing me to get the third down and get some good rushes.
So how was that? Obviously, you physically couldn't, but just to be standing on the
of
sideline.
course, as a competitor, I always want to be on the field. But I understood the process and the game plan, and I trusted it.
When did you kind of shift into that mode of like, hey, we got to kind of preserve like when we can get the most out of you?
Probably like in the first quarter.
How are you feeling right now, physically?
I just played a football game.
Well, no. Do you think it's an injury or is it something you?
No, just nicked up. Yeah.
Something you think you'll be able to play through going forward?
Yeah, I finished the game. So.
At this point.
Mike Kafka gave no clarity on it as well. That Dexter Lawrence answer basically made me more confused of what's going on. Did he go to the trainer room? Like what is going on with Dexter Lawrence? Obviously it's some type of injury, but like what is it and why is it limiting him in the game? Like I feel like we have no clarity of what's going on. They didn't want
to say what the injury was. I don't know why. I said to him afterwards, why don't you just say what it was? You're leaving open for interpretation. Everyone's going to say all kinds of things. He said, well, that's going to happen anyway, so whatever. But I don't understand why you're hiding it. He clearly is dealing with a minor injury or some kind of injury he had during the game. It occurred early in the game, and his usage dipped drastically. And if you go look at it, the 3 biggest runs of the game, I think the 69-yarder, the 49-yarder, and whatever the other one was. I don't remember.
2 49-yarders.
2 49-yarders. All 3 of them were when Dexter Lawrence wasn't on the field. And he only played 33 of 65 snaps. That's 51%. That's significantly less than he usually plays around 70, 75% of the snaps, like basically. So his usage was down. They weren't using him on first down, and they thought they can get away with, hey, especially in overtime, like we're sticking with what we were doing here at the end of the game. We'll use him in pass rush situations on second and third downs when we can, but he won't be able to hold up if we use him every play on a drive in overtime. And so, but they couldn't get past the first play. And there you go. But the bigger problem here is that you can't be so reliant on one guy that you're going to let up a 69-yard touchdown when he's not on the field. Like, what does that say about your depth there?
Yeah, it's terrible. Hell, even the depth, the starter. Like, it's unbelievable to have Dexter Lawrence in a position group and be like, yeah, that's the weakest group on a 2-10 team. It's a pathetic group. So yeah,
we'll find out on Wednesday because I assume he'll be on the injury. Oh, you know what? Thursday. No, yeah, Thursday. Thanksgiving, because it's that extra day.
Wait, yeah. So actually, that's a good question. What's the schedule this week?
They're going to
just give Thursday as an off day since it is Thanksgiving and go Wednesday, Friday?
They're going to practice Wednesday, take off Thursday for Thanksgiving, and then Friday, Saturday. Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, they have an extra day caked in, and they could just, give it to them on Thanksgiving. It makes perfect sense. There you go.
That does make sense. They're the one team that gets to actually take Thanksgiving off.
Yeah.
Or two teams that get to take Thanksgiving off.
I mean, I don't know if we're not going in as reporters. I don't know if they have like a walkthrough in the morning or something like small like that, or you know what I mean? Like if you have a walkthrough from like 8 to 10 a.m. or 8 to 11 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning, it's not that big a deal, right?
Thanksgiving practice is a crazy vibe because, my last high school football game was a playoff game that was the Friday after Thanksgiving. And that's a crazy vibe, waking up Thanksgiving morning practice and then go on to end. All right.
But I mean, at least in New Jersey, it used to
be
be high school football in New Jersey. When I grew up here, it was you played your rival on Thanksgiving, like Thanksgiving Day or
really?
Yeah, or Friday was you play whatever the rival school was the town next to you. It was like a big deal. It was a big rivalry game. Yeah, that was
for us. It's regional finals of the playoffs.
Yeah, now it changed to the playoffs, so that they basically killed off the Thanksgiving rivalries. And it's not.
Are New Jersey state championships done?
No, they're in the process. They actually, they play at MetLife Stadium. So they're at the point now where the games get to MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, Joe Shane's son is pretty good, right? I mean, he's a freshman quarterback for a state championship team. I'm excited to see.
I think he's a sophomore, but
okay,
yeah,
I'm really excited.
He's in the running. Bosco, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited for
Catholic.
Chris son.
Him and Chris Snee's son each are on one of those teams. I don't know which is.
I'm hoping he doesn't go play baseball, Chris Snee's son, because he's like a really good baseball player too.
Yeah.
Let's see what other. So I asked about the Dexter Lawrence thing. Okay, next thing. Here, how about this? Where is it? Where are you? Sometimes I think they'd be making us lose on purpose because it's no way, bro. You throw the ball instead of running it to make them burn 2 timeouts. Then you don't kick a field goal. Then they have to go down and score. Football common sense. Am I missing something? So this was a tweet by Malik Nabers after the game. You guys didn't ask about it on Monday. I get it, the Shane Bowen thing. Will you guys ask about it on Wednesday?
Absolutely. It was a mistake not to ask about it on Monday, but we're on a Zoom. I can only speak for myself. I'm at the airport about to get on a flight, so that everything it's kind of like a crazy situation. They just fired a coach, but yeah, we're gonna, 100% that'll be asked in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I'll go first. Let me go on record by saying I couldn't disagree with his line of thinking anymore. Like you're up 3 points against the Detroit Lions on the road, and you're worried about, wasting their timeouts and running the clock out with like basically 5 minutes left, a little shade under 5 minutes. Like that should not be the priority. Priority is getting in the end zone, but
you should get him on the show to debate it.
I don't even know how people, that's their thought process, but whatever. I don't, where do you stand on that? We'll just touch on that real quick.
I don't actually care about like his, opinion about like the situation, like
I'm just curious what you think. You think they should have run the ball and just kicked a field goal there?
Oh, I think 4th and 6 changes things, but I'm just not like I kind of agree with I agree with the decision. I just didn't trust them with a little under 3 minutes left to stop them from getting the ball at the 35 or whatever and getting a touchdown.
I agree.
I
agree. I had no confidence that they would.
I also, if you knew that you were going to go for it on 4th down, why not just try and pound it in from the 2-yard line?
Well, they did on 3rd down, and look what happened.
I understand that.
They lost 4 yards.
But I felt like if you knew that, like that would have helped run some, burn a timeout. But with the Malik Nabers thing, what do people say about that? Because I'm trying to be more like, you're going to have to deal with some stupid shit when you have great players, and especially great players at the wide receiver position. But it's also like, that's really dumb by Malik Nabers to tweet that out after the game. And I think Malik Nabers probably agrees. He deleted it very soon afterwards. There's nothing of benefit of that. It's even different. Yeah. Like, what do people think about that? Because Malik Nabers is obviously not part of the day-to-day right now. Like, what's going on with that?
I think in general, and I didn't speak to a ton of people about this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory that everybody thought that it's a dumb thing to tweet. We don't like you just don't need to give those comments. You don't need to criticize the interim head coach or the permanent head coach, whatever, on Twitter or X, whatever we call it these days. Like it's just silly. Okay. And that's why it was taken down right away. And it's funny because if you go back and I think it's still on Malik Nabers' timeline, and like it's like they be telling me to take stuff down all the time. Like, yeah. Because you tweet stuff like that. Exactly. But it brings up a bigger point, I think, and to me, is that when the new head coach comes in here, he's got to get all this shit straightened out. Bobby.
Yep.
Like, hey, this is what's acceptable here, and this is what's not acceptable. You ran the country club before. Carl Banks and company took offense to my country club term. Who disagrees with it now, Bobby? Huh? Come on. Sometimes you gotta wade through the stuff and read through it,
dude,
and get the hints and clues. Like the program was all over the place. Everybody was doing whatever they wanted. It's all coming to a head now. Predictable. Okay. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, don't sit here and act like Jordan Raanan. You were a big Shane Bowen defender, and then in the last 3 weeks, all of a sudden you're blaming him for everything. So I just want to say that.
What did I blame Shane Bowen for?
You, Jordan Raanan, just defended Shane Bowen and all. It's this and that, and then now
never on the merits of his.
And now you blame everything on him. You, Jordan Raanan. I'm not talking about somebody else doing that.
Yeah. Gotcha. I mean, look, but as I was saying, it's about the new head coach is going to have to come in here and really lay down the law. This is what's acceptable and what's not. We got to get everybody in order here. We can't just have, fires and all over the place, and they're putting out fires left and right, and they're worried about perception of this and that. Like, that's not a winning program. That's not what leads to winning programs. Like, they got to get this straightened out, and sitting Malik Nabers down and saying, this is what I expect from you, right? You got to show up on time to meetings. I don't want to see you tweeting about your teammates online or your coach. Like, these kind of things are unacceptable, and there has to be consequences and penalties if those things happen. Significant.
You know what I think Mike Kafka should do as someone who is likely not going to be the next head coach? I would deal with this through the media, right? Because they have I'm team deal with this stuff behind closed doors, but sometimes that doesn't get through to somebody. And what does Mike Kafka have to lose? I would when you guys ask about him about that tomorrow, I would say flat out, really didn't like that. I thought that was very, in his own words, I thought that was very dumb. That was not helpful. That's hurtful to what I'm trying to do here. Since I've been named the interim head coach. And I would love for Malik Nabers to come in and we can explain it detailed why we went for it there. But until then, I would appreciate Malik Nabers not putting that out for the entire world to see. Deal with it through the media. Because sometimes just going and talking to him and saying, hey, maybe don't do that, doesn't really get through to a guy. Here's
the problem for Mike Kafka. Ideally, in a perfect world, he would like to have, win out and keep this job, right? Okay. And then he's a head coach, for the New York Giants. He gets to work with Jaxson Dart. There's some talent here. He's in a good spot. It won't help him if he calls out the team's best player publicly.
Why not?
Like, because then that player
teams would appreciate that.
I don't think Malik Nabers will appreciate that.
Okay.
So these are the things that he has to think about here.
I'm not, but at the same time, like, that's part of the issue. We're not looking to get, what Malik Nabers to appreciate. We're trying to get everybody, in line with the same vision on things. Like, you can't, like, in order to get, like, the ways to where this type of stuff doesn't snowball, right? Because little things in the vision, I've dealt with this with many of players, right? Whereas individually, that's not the worst thing in the world, but it snowballs. And if you don't deal with it, it becomes, you're getting ready for a game and you've got a freaking interview with Josina Anderson Sunday morning before a game, blasting an entirely new coaching staff, an entirely new regime, a franchise, two-time Super Bowl champion quarterback. Like, and you're like, how did we get here? Because we basically didn't say anything about all this stuff. So at some point, you have to deal with that with the new coaching staff because it'll happen. Now, the best way to deal with it is just win games. If you just win games, then you'll never have to deal with it for the most part. It'll be little. The little stuff will stay little. And Malik is great, right? So I'm willing to put up with some stupid shit sometimes. But in an ideal world, you deal with that so it doesn't trickle down to players that you're not willing to put up with it. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think if I'm Mike Kafka, I would probably take the route. And look, I would have taken the route of calling Abdul Carter out and saying what happened and being honest there and being honest about Dex and just saying like he's injured. It would have made it less, I heard Dex getting killed yesterday. And like, if you just said he suffered I'm making up an injury, groin injury, right? He suffered a groin injury. What?
I said, you hear that big blue film room? He has a groin injury.
Like, if he had just said that, I think Dexter Lawrence would have taken a lot less shrapnel yesterday because I heard calls on radio saying, he's weak, blah, 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 this and that, da, da, da. Like, this is what you leave open for interpretation. But calling out Malik Nabers wouldn't be the way I go with that one because I don't know if Nabers would take that well. I'd probably, if I want to be stern and make a point with him, find him behind the scenes and be strong with that. And everyone internally sees that and go that route rather than the call out route.
Yeah. So I think it's like that tweet is not in my head of like, oh, what the hell? But I'm just like, yeah, that's going to snowball if this doesn't get addressed. And I don't think
it would have been like, what the hell if it's a permanent coach? The fact that it's an interim coach, we're like, big deal.
Exactly. If this was a brand new head coach that they hire next year and this happens, that's a big deal.
Yes, exactly. But it's not, and so that's why we're sitting here like, okay, it's dumb. I think everyone agrees it's dumb, but you shouldn't do that. But
yeah, coming up on the bye week. A lot of guys with expiring contracts: Jermaine Illuminor, Cordell Flott, Micah McFadden, Wan'Dale Robinson coming off of a career high game. Where do you think? Do any of those guys stand a chance of getting something done before the season is over, which has never happened under Joe Shane?
He usually talks to guys during the bye week, but I would be surprised if any of them got a deal done because, Bobby, they are this close to free agency. Right? Their buy is so late. If you're the player, and I've talked to some of this about it, you kind of want to get to free agency right now, right? Like that's where you get the most money. That's where the market's the best, especially if you're a cornerback like Flott or a wide receiver or even a right tackle. All three of those guys now, McFadden's injured, so he's different. But those three guys, I mean, they're in positions where they're about to get huge, big paydays. All three of them are going to get paid. And they're this close. So the risk is less because it's only 4 games. So I would be surprised if anything gets done, but I would expect the Giants and Joe Shane to go to them and at least have some baseline talks.
Yeah, that's where I agree. Where I have a hard time seeing it happening is because they only have 4 games after the bye week, so there's not as much time for things to swing. Because Cordell Flott was like the player who I'm like, you have the most to prove at like this second half part of the season. And he's done, his game. I haven't actually watched the film yet, bro. But like holding Jameson to 0 for 0 is pretty damn good.
He dropped a couple passes, just to be fair, but yeah, he played really well. One of them could have gone for a really long gain because Flott, he got in his sight line, but he didn't actually touch the ball. And then,
but Flott's good at that, and that does affect receivers too.
No, I get it. And he deserves credit for that, but at the same time, he could have, did hit him.
I think everybody wants Illuminor back, and then it's like, all right, what kind of combination do you get a Flott? Wan'Dale is going to get the biggest contract out of those trio, Flott, Wan'Dale, and McFadden. I think McFadden gets the cheapest one. I think people be surprised how cheap McFadden might be able to be brought back for when you look at linebacker contracts. Flott is
the other guys play super premium positions, right? Offensive tackle, wide receiver.
Illuminor is going to get $20 million a year or something. Yeah, Illuminor's going to get $20 million a year. Wan'Dale probably gets something around the Khalil Shakir contract. Flott is like, how much is he valued around the rest of the league with 1 year of above average production?
Somebody will Somebody will value that though and give him a decent contract. I don't think he won't be like he won't be at the $18 million a year of Paulson Adebo, but I think he could crack like double digits, and which a year ago we would have laughed at.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, so this is the last thing. I don't want to ask much about the coaching search. What happened with Dart concussion protocol? Because I watched the Jameis Winston interview. It very much felt like they did not realize until late Thursday night, like Thursday afternoon, that Dart wasn't going to play. It felt like they were full go. Dart's going to be the quarterback until Thursday evening.
That's exactly the case. I think they just thought that it was the best decision for them as an organization to kind of slow play it and take their time with him and give him an extra week. Like what, but
that wasn't the decision because they were planning on him playing until last second. So like then he just didn't clear the concussion.
They saw something that made them think that was the right decision. And then he just didn't advance in the concussion protocol, but he also didn't go back. He practiced. He was out there running around on the field, Bobby.
Yeah, that's very weird. Why was he out there in a helmet on Friday exerting?
He's out there in a helmet, and he was running around on the field doing stuff. So, my understanding is he's feeling pretty good. So, I don't think they're gonna say, "Oh, we need another week here," because the likelihood is he probably will be able to pass this week. You never know. I mean, who knows? He could come back with a headache today, and it sets it all back to zero. So you never know with concussions. But I just think it's trending towards him playing at this point, and they just made that somebody internally, medically, made that decision that this was the best route for the team. He never got to the point where he went to the independent neurologist.
Yeah. Okay. But I was like, wait, what? Because you could tell Wednesday night when it didn't pass. I'm like, all right, there's something up here. And then you watch the Jameis press conference, and it was like Jameis was clearly trying to like say everything but the fact that they had no plan of Jameis being the starter this week. Who Jameis, by the way, I do the rankings every week, and this week I looked at like splits between Russ, Dart, and Jameis. The number one passing offense would be Jameis Winston. He's like fourth in EPA per play for quarterbacks. Your offense is fourth in EPA per play. Jameis has been dealing, and he's only had 2 interceptions too. So,
how many interceptable passes did he throw?
I don't think there was any in the Detroit game outside of the interception, but the Green Bay game he could have had.
There was like 3 or 4, yeah. So look, Jameis, this is the thing of it, Jameis, and I'm not surprised. Like there's the incredible highs and there's the lows, right? That's Jameis. If you let him play long enough, we'll probably see both of them. Like, so I'm not, we saw the best of Jameis the other day. He played great for most of the game.
Yeah.
Definitely wants that Wandale throwback at the end, but like that could have been that would have got them down like inside the 10. But yeah, he was dynamite in that game. He even caught a pass, broke a tackle, and had yak. I mean, come on. That's
the craziest play I've ever seen in my life, by the way.
I don't know. It might be that's crazier than a guy catching the ball against his helmet.
If David Tyree made that play and for a 2-10 team against the Detroit Lions in Week 12, we wouldn't like if that play happened in the Super Bowl. Like I'm not talking about like moment, right? Obviously, the Tyree play is way bigger of a moment. But that's the craziest play I've ever seen.
Bobby.
Where Jameis Winston is breaking a tackle 3 different times, catching a back shoulder catch. Gunnar Olszewski is running up through the pocket to make the throw. It was
an awesome play, but I've never seen a guy catch the ball against the helmet.
Okay.
I mean, and it was a 40-yard pass against the guy's helmet.
I understand. I'm not sitting here telling you the David Tyree play isn't crazy. I was just like, that was unbelievable.
No, I understand. We're talking about 2 crazy. I think we're both in agreement. They're both ridiculous plays. I mean, it was an unbelievable play by James. Unbelievable. Yeah. It wasn't even open, and he went and caught it. It was great.
He was open. Gunnar Olszewski threw a bad throw.
Well, I mean,
Amir Smith-Marset would have thrown a much better throw, by the way. I'm just saying.
He's under pressure. He actually made a really good play, just like Jameis did on the first trick play, too, of like just at least sidestepping the pressure.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, on to the next one. Let's get to some questions and get out of here.
Yeah, let's get to the question. So what do we got? Let's get some of the super chats. I'm starting to think our inside linebacker is our biggest need over guard, cornerback, and wide receiver. And any inside linebacker that can actually cover and tackle in space. Arvell Reese, ? Says the Crews in 26. I mean, I haven't done a full preview. Actually, we have. That's something that we do on Giants Nation. We do in the summer. We do a preview of free agency. Leo Chanel. I want Leo Chanel in free agency. They could even pick linebacker at first overall, but I would still want Leo Chanel on this team. So how about that? You didn't think I had a full breakdown of 2027 free agency or 2026 free agency? I do. I'm going to pull up my notes while you talk, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, inside linebacker is definitely a big need. They got to figure that out. It's been a big problem this year. Okereke hasn't been great. And then the spot next to him has been a mess. So, yeah. For sure. But I don't know. I might start with cornerback just because it's a premium position over like their cornerback position is unsustainable.
But what if they re-sign Flott and you have a Debo?
Still not enough. But you're re-signing him, so there's a guy you're signing. So like that that's part of the need, like because he's not signed right now. So right now, look at that position group. Right now, that position group going into next year, you have Paulson, Adebo, and Drew Phillips, and Deonte Banks. How do you feel? With nothing behind them. Nothing.
I have Corey Black behind them. Mickey, thank you for the membership. Let's see. Let's get some of the questions. So get your questions in.
I have a bunch of stuff started.
What are the odds the Giants retain Carm Bracello and James Ferentz? O-line, these are the offensive line coach. O-line will probably have some turnover, and they seem to be doing a good job. Does that feel like for you that those guys are gonna keep their jobs? There's usually like one position coach who gets held over.
Well,
from a new staff.
Here's the thing. I think that's one of those things. You're like, oh, they've done a really good job, and you like them. And when you interview guys, you say, you know what, you should talk to these guys and think about keeping them. We'd like to keep them if that's an option. Then there's the flip side of it with those guys saying, do I want to stay here? Do I want to stay with this new coach? Do I mix with the new coach? Right? There's all these obstacles that could come with it. So yeah, I would think the Giants would want to keep them, but doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a coach who has an offensive line coach that he's worked with forever, right? And they want to bring in their own guys. You don't want to force that down their throat, and I don't think the Giants would. Or if Brasillo and Ferentz say, we don't feel good about the way this organization is going, maybe we don't want to be back here. We want to go to a better spot, and they have a better option. So all these things factor into the equation.
But they're under contract, and you could force. But I agree with that, where you can't, especially the O-line coach, you can't force that. Not force, but like I wouldn't even strongly recommend. I would just like, hey, like these guys have done a fairly good job with them, but especially who you get on offense, the way you teach the run game is a very specific thing, and you kind of have to be on the same page. I mean, look at Joe Judge and Mark Colombo. Like their big contention was the way that they taught the run game. And Joe Judge was right. Mark Colombo's a terrible offensive line coach. Brian says, as it relates to concussions in the protocol, does clear equal 100%? I understand you can't always be 100% sure, but how close are we talking? So that's actually a good question. Does clear in concussion protocol mean that you're fully clear, like you're fully clear of symptoms?
When you're cleared, when you clear the protocol, 100%. First of all, when you even get to like the final step, you're cleared you're done with all symptoms and stuff. Yeah. That's the whole point, is you have to go through, like, you have to do a physical activity, right? Football, and then you have to do football, and then you have to wait 24 hours to make sure you feel well. Like I'm going off the top of my head, but it's something along these lines. And then you have to go to the next step, and then the next step is you have to practice non-contact. 24 hours, still feel like no symptoms. Then the last step is you have to go to a full contact. Could be a full practice with contact, but which a quarterback, there's no such thing as contact in practice anyway. And then, finish that and still have no symptoms. Then you have to go to the independent neurologist, like a doctor that's not associated to the team, a head doctor, who then basically looks at you and says, yes, we don't see anything here. You're fully cleared. So I believe at that point you would be considered 100%. That's my interpretation. I'm not a doctor, but I only stay at a Holiday Inn.
Holiday Inn Express. Authentic says, will Slayton and Singletary be on this team in 2026? I want to focus on Slayton. He obviously can't. I mean, you could cut him and do a Logan Ryan, but you'd even be losing more cap space than you did with Logan Ryan, where it was kind of like you lost $1 million in cap space. I still think that was a bad decision by Joe Schoen. It was the first time when I realized, like, oh, new GM, you're just not allowed to criticize him.
Wink was part of that. That just wasn't.
Okay. But let me with Slayton, as somebody who has been a Slayton defender, this season has been disappointed, and it goes and beyond just drops. Wandale has had a really good season. He probably is going to get an 1,000-yard season. He's an expiring contract that, a top 5, I think, Joe Schoen draft pick that they probably want to bring back. But they also probably want to upgrade the receiver room as well. Like, do you think that they would be willing to, like, just sell off Slayton? Like, do you think there'd be anybody that'd be willing to trade for Slayton for a 7th-round pick? Or, like, what do you do with Slayton? Because him at how old is he now? He's having basically his worst season outside of 2021. And a big part of 2021 was they got 3 guys over him with Galladay, Tony, and Shepard, and then the Daniel Jones injury. He's 28. He'll be 29 next year.
Yeah, I guess you could if you really wanted to, but I don't know. The likelihood is you probably keep Darius Slayton, right? And then you could still add a wide receiver in the draft that you would hope that could contribute in some degree, right? And then, one more year with Slayton and then move forward, because otherwise you're selling him at a low. I don't know if it makes a ton of sense unless the new coach just doesn't like him at all.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of a scenario where a bounce back to some degree. Like you saw pieces of it in the last few weeks, but he's kind of been slowed down by the injury.
Yeah, the injury, but at the same time, I'm not going to a guy who's getting older and has had like multiple little injuries this year. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, next year he's going to be healthy. I'm just thinking more of the scenario.
I understand. It's just it's just like it's going to be hard to pull off, right?
Yeah,
I'm just paid a decent amount.
I'm thinking more of the scenario. Injury. Okay. I'm thinking more of the scenario if they draft like a Jordan Tyson or a Carnell, like somebody at the top. Like if they take somebody in the first round at receiver, it'd be very weird to have a guy with like a $16 million cap hit just flat out on the bench and paying Wan'Dale Robinson.
That would change the situation.
Yeah.
If you draft a receiver with the top 5 pick, yes, it would, and you have Nabers and receiver X, yes, then it completely changes the situation because those guys are going to play every single down.
Yep. Why not consider Kafka, says Peace to Mateo 11. Dude, discipline Carter, bench Banks. He didn't bench. Oh, that was another thing. The idea that he just like Banks was not a healthy scratch. He was injured on the injury report all week and missed practice on Friday.
Yeah.
I don't understand where that came from.
Banks would be playing if he was healthy, by the way.
Yeah. He'd be rotating with Corey Black just like he was before. Calling plays, fired bone, and keeps his composure. Mind you, his offense hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't dislike what Mike Kafka's done so far, to be honest with you. The only thing is, I've if anything, I've liked what he's done. I know it hasn't. The only problem is it hasn't correlated directly to wins, which in the end is what matters here. Like that would certainly help his cause. And the other part of it is, and what Dan Duggan said, and I saw him say this recently, and I don't want to pretend like I'm stealing it, but the reality is, and I think most people feel this way, is it's been so bad for a couple of years. You're bringing in a new coach. You're like keeping him there would almost be like not starting over. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas you win when they win 3 games last year. Let's say they win 4 this year. I'm letting them double up. You won 7 games in 2 years and kind of really aren't changing that much. Like you're keeping a coach who's already been there and a GM who's been there. It's like, I don't know. That doesn't sit right with me. It's like we probably need to overhaul this here. Now, if he finishes by winning 4 of the last 5, I certainly would change my opinion on that.
Yeah,
Because at least you built something. You feel like you have some momentum. And I know momentum from season to season doesn't matter, but you have something with a head coach who's 38 years old, who a lot of people around the league do like. And we see he's a pretty bright offensive mind. And when he calls the plays, they've actually had some success offensively. You keep him with Jaxson Dart. Like I definitely can come around on that.
Yeah, I've always liked Kafka. I just don't know if he's ever struck me as like the head coach type. It's easy to kind of do some of these things in 2 weeks when you're trying to clean up somebody else's mess. It's just different when it becomes your entire. Now you run the entire show, and I do agree. Where it's like, all right, so we're not making really that many changes. Besides like the defensive coaching staff and getting him his own QB coach.
Bobby, we have something to announce, don't we?
Oh my God, we should have done that at the top of the show.
I know. We'll have to save that for something else then.
Well, no, just do it now, and we'll put out like a tweet graphic.
No, we'll save it. We'll save it.
For what?
Because I said so.
People need time to prepare. People need time to make plans.
No, I know. We'll announce it later this week. Okay. All
right. Well, just keep your December 15th Monday evening plans clear. I'll say that.
Exactly.
And we've already announced that we're going to be doing that. We just have like the location and all that stuff.
Right.
So just do that. Is there any other things? I mean, we're at 1 hour and 6 minutes. I mean,
yeah.
Is there anything else that you
No, how about
Eagles lost? Are you sad?
Cowboys, man. Watch out for the Cowboys. By the way, so let's think about this for a second. Season finale. The Dallas Cowboys coming into MetLife Stadium. That could be a very meaningful game for the Cowboys, right? They're now back in the mix. We've seen the Giants already need to go to silent count twice, San Francisco, Green Bay. Do you know what that stadium is going to look like in week 17? I think it could be an all-time high away crowd, like 75-25 Cowboys. And that's crazy. I almost thought it was impossible to have over 50% road team for the Cowboys in that situation. I think it could be.
I might just go just to feel that atmosphere of what that's like.
That'll be bizarro world for real. Like I was thinking about that as the Cowboys were winning. Holy cow, that could be something else.
Novice of Things says my prediction: Spags was the head coaching gig and Kafka sticks around at OC. It's the easy Giants move. For what's worth, I wanted Ortiz and Wink, not Shane and the ball Dable.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that combination. That would make some sense. You got the offensive guy and the defensive guy. You don't have to make the full changes for Jaxson Dart. You won't have to learn a new scheme. You won't have to start over. So that is a scenario where I think it's not crazy. What would you think if that were the way this played out?
I don't want Spags as my head coach.
I love Spags as a person, but I don't know. I would have questions too.
I just don't want him as my head coach.
This seems like that would seem like a very Giants move. It's the easy move, right? And I get what that guy's saying, and Ortiz and Wink he wanted also, but yeah. Just would seem like the super easy move.
Yep. All right, won't you close this out?
But right before I close this out, just makes me think back to that GM search in 2017, 2018, which is that what it was? Yeah.
It was, for
they fired Jerry Reese, after the McAdoo thing. So 2017.
That list of names is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Worst search, the most fraudulent, pathetic search of all time.
That might be the worst GM search of all time. Like, Gettleman was the best candidate of the group, like, by far, probably. Like, it's the worst, I think, the worst group of GM candidates I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, so bad. All right, that's it for Breaking Big Blue Times Giants Nation show. Stay tuned for a big announcement we'll have coming later this week about where we're going to be on December 15th. We want all you guys to come out there. You're listening to Breaking Big Blue. As always, like, subscribe, and Giants Nation show. I saw your eyes pop up in there. And Giants Nation show. As always, like, subscribe, tell your friends. I'm Jordan Raanan. That's Bobby Skinner. See you next time.